I stood in my kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, staring at a greasy post-it stuck to the stainless steel fridge. You'll always be a loser. The coffee was still steaming beside the sink. The bedroom closet was half empty. My husband, Trent Caldwell, took the passport drawer key and the joint debit card. The door closed softly behind him like a judgment. I didn't cry. I catalogued. Phone logs. Bank alerts. The garage camera. The second I tugged the post-it free, I felt it in my bones. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a plan. I texted him once. No reply. The nausea turned into something steadier. Proof. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. My name is Noelle Archer, 36, operations lead turned quiet founder. I'm the daughter of a short-order cook who taught me how to keep receipts and breathe through panic. My childhood was a one-bedroom apartment with a father who counted nickels next to a flickering neon diner sign and a mother who left early and stayed gone. I built my life like a spreadsheet. Line by line, clean and backed up. Nights in community college, a transfer scholarship, then the long climb through data operations until I co-created LedgerLift, a compliance automation platform grown from my midnight prototypes. Years ago, before I ever met Trent, I filed the core IP under my maiden name and rolled it into the Archer Living Trust. After the wedding, he laughed at my paranoid paperwork. Called my caution small. He spent big to look like success. I thought that was our only problem. The kitchen post-it said otherwise. I photographed the post-it with my phone. Timestamp. Evidence. Then I bagged it in a Ziploc and labeled it with a marker. My hands didn't shake. My bank alert buzzed. $18,000 withdrawn from our joint account. I opened the app and froze the card immediately. Another alert tried to hit seconds later. Transaction declined. I watched the failed notification flash on my screen. His second withdrawal just bounced. That felt like oxygen. I walked to my laptop and opened the building security portal. The elevator log showed Trent left at 6:47 a.m. But he wasn't alone. The timestamp showed two people exiting together. My stomach dropped. I scrolled through the lobby camera footage. There he was, walking toward the parking garage. And behind him, close enough to share an umbrella, was a woman in a camel coat. Sunglasses. At night. I zoomed in on the frame. The woman's laugh was caught mid-motion, her head tilted back. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it at our holiday party last year during a toast. I rewound the footage and played it again. My chest tightened. I tagged the timestamp and exported the clip. Then I opened my contacts and found the name. Anya. Trent's former colleague. Former. Right. I stared at the frozen frame of them walking together. My phone buzzed. A password reset email hit my inbox from an unfamiliar IP address. I clicked the email. Someone tried to reset my brokerage account password. The request came from an IP address I didn't recognize. My pulse kicked up. I opened my security dashboard. Multiple failed login attempts. My brokerage. My cloud storage. My business email. All within the last hour. I switched to two-factor backup keys and rotated every password. My fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Each layer of security rebuilt. Each door locked again. Then I searched my spam folder. There it was. A new email address I'd never seen before. The domain was registered to Caldwell Consulting LLC. I ran a quick search. The LLC was created last month. Manager listed as one of Trent's college friends. My stomach turned. I exported screenshots of everything. The login attempts. The IP addresses. The burner email. All of it went into a new folder labeled Evidence. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. My phone buzzed again. A text from my aunt. He told the family you've been hiding money. I read it twice. Then I stood up and grabbed my keys. I had a family dinner to attend. And I wasn't going empty-handed. I printed the joint account ledger. Every withdrawal. Every cash pull. Every expense labeled work trip or business meeting. The pages stacked thick in my hands. The dinner was at Trent's sister's house. I walked in holding my folder. Trent sat at the head of the table, playing the wounded spouse. His sister, Dana, hinted that I'd been siphoning funds. That I'd hidden money. That I was secretive and controlling. I listened without interrupting. Then I opened my folder and spread the printouts across the dining table. The joint account ledger. Every withdrawal highlighted in yellow. Trent's name next to each one. Work expenses. Business lunches. Cash advances. 18 grand just this morning. The room went silent. Dana's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Trent's face turned red. This is a private matter, he said. You made it public when you lied to your family, I replied calmly. I gathered my papers and excused myself to the bathroom. Inside, I locked the door and leaned against the sink. I heard muffled voices through the wall. Trent was on the phone. I pressed my ear to the door. Her little app isn't protected, he whispered. We just need to push harder. My hands clenched the edge of the sink. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. I hit record. Then I walked back to the table, placed my folder in my bag, and left without saying goodbye. I had what I needed. The cracks were showing. And I was done pretending they weren't there. I got home and went straight to my desk. I pulled the fireproof box from the bottom drawer. Inside were the trust documents. IP assignments. Notarized dates. Investor letters. Board minutes. Everything predated our marriage. Clean chain of title. Every signature notarized. Every filing stamped and recorded. I spread them across my desk like a map. This was my armor. My protection. The company wasn't marital property. The IP wasn't up for negotiation. I'd built this before Trent. Before the wedding. Before the promises that turned into post-its. I closed the box and locked it. Then I reached for the key. It wasn't there. My heart dropped. I searched the drawer. The desk surface. The floor. Nothing. Then I remembered. The false bottom. I pressed the hidden latch under the drawer and it popped open. There was the duplicate key, exactly where I'd hidden it 2 years ago. I exhaled slowly. Trent didn't know about the false bottom. He thought he'd locked me out. But I was always 3 steps ahead. I slid the key into my pocket and opened my laptop. I had a lawyer to call. And a litigation file to start. Because this wasn't just about a failed marriage anymore. This was about protecting everything I'd built. And I wasn't going to let him take it. Not one line of code. Not $1. Not one piece of my future. I called Maren Cole, my corporate counsel. She picked up on the second ring. I explained everything. The post-it. The withdrawals. The hacking attempts. The family ambush. Maren listened without interrupting. Then she said, we start a litigation file. Tonight. We set up a marital asset audit. Preserved evidence. Logged every anomaly. Then Maren said something that made me sit up. Didn't Trent sign a postnup? I blinked. I'd forgotten. The night my dad had emergency surgery, Trent was drunk and emotional. He signed papers I'd drafted months earlier. A postnuptial agreement. No claims to company IP. No interference with business operations. It was notarized the next morning. I found the document in my files and sent it to Maren. She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. This changes everything. We added it to the binder. Clean. Binding. Ironclad. I hung up and felt the weight lift slightly. Then my phone lit up. Unknown caller. Blocked ID. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. I played the message. A distorted voice. Mail. Maybe altered. You'll regret this. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Marin. Then I added it to the evidence folder. They were escalating. Good. Every move they made was another line in my case. Another nail in their coffin. I poured a glass of water and stared out the window. The city lights blinked back at me. I wasn't scared. I was ready. I traced Caldwell Consulting LLC. Registered last month. Manager listed as Hugh, one of Trent's college buddies. I pulled the business bank statements through a commercial database I had access to. Recent inflows matched our joint account withdrawals. Perfectly. 18,000 here. 5,000 there. Every pull from our account showed up as a deposit in the Shell LLC. I exported the screenshots. Account numbers. Dates. Amounts. Everything lined up. This wasn't sloppy. But it wasn't smart either. Trent thought he could hide money in a shell company and I wouldn't notice. He forgot I spent a decade in data operations. I could trace breadcrumbs through a hurricane. I saved everything to a cloud folder with 3 levels of encryption. Then I printed a hard copy and added it to the binder. The evidence was stacking up. Piece by piece. Pattern by pattern. My doorbell rang. I walked to the intercom and checked the camera. A courier stood outside holding an envelope. I buzzed him up and signed for the delivery. The return address was from a law firm downtown. I tore it open. A demand letter. Trent's attorney accused me of concealment. Of hiding assets. Of manipulating finances. They threatened emergency spousal support. My jaw clenched. I called Marin. I just got served. She sighed. Send it over. We'll respond with the trust and the postnup. I scanned the letter and forwarded it. Then I sat down and stared at the pages. They were coming at me hard. But every swing they took just gave me more evidence. More proof. More leverage. Marin drafted our response. She attached the trust documents. The IP assignments. The postnup Trent signed. Everything showed separate property. No commingling. No marital claims. She sent it certified mail and copied their attorney. The tone was professional but sharp. If they pushed harder, we'd ask for sanctions. I waited. 2 days later, I got an email. Not from Trent's lawyer. From a gossip blog. Subject line, Tech Founder's Secret Fortune Exposed in Divorce. My stomach dropped. I opened it. The draft article was half finished. It claimed I'd hidden millions from Trent. That I manipulated finances. That I was ruthless and calculating. The sources were anonymous. But the details were specific. Too specific. I called Theo, our PR lead at LedgerLift. Someone's leaking to the press. We documented every false claim. Prepared a pre-publication notice. Threatened defamation. Theo sent it to the blog's editor. An hour later, the blog spiked the piece. But Theo preserved the metadata. The leak came from an IP address registered to Dana, Trent's sister. I added it to the binder. The family was involved. They were coordinating. And they were leaving digital footprints everywhere. My phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. Someone posed as you to request the investor cap table. I closed my eyes. They were going after the company now. They wanted the list of investors. The equity breakdown. The valuation. I texted back, lock it down. Rotate permissions. No one gets access without my direct approval. This was war now. And I wasn't losing. At the office, I called an emergency meeting with our CFO and legal team. We locked the cap table behind counsel-only access. Rotated internal permissions. Set up audit trails for every request. No one could touch investor data without leaving a trace. Then my assistant forwarded an email she'd flagged. It was from months ago. Anya to Trent. Subject line, timing. Body, when she cashes out, you'll get yours. I read it 3 times. My hands went numb. This wasn't new. This wasn't spontaneous. They'd been planning this for months. Maybe longer. Anya wasn't just a colleague. She was a co-conspirator. And Trent wasn't just leaving me. He was positioning himself for a payday. I forwarded the email to Marin. Then I opened my calendar. I had one more move to make. I booked a meeting with Pierce Nolan, a family lawyer known for surgical precision. If Marin handled the corporate side, Pierce would handle the divorce. I needed both. Because Trent wasn't just trying to leave. He was trying to take everything. And I was going to make sure he walked away with nothing but regret. I closed my laptop and stared at the city skyline through the glass. The building felt taller than usual. The air felt colder. But I felt steady. Focused. Ready. Because I'd spent my whole life preparing for moments like this. And I wasn't going to waste the lesson now. Pierce Nolan's office was all glass and steel. He sat across from me, fingers steepled, listening. I laid out everything. The post-it. The withdrawals. The Shell LLC. The hacking attempts. The leaked gossip. The email between Anya and Trent. Pierce took notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, he looked up. Do you want to punish him or protect yourself? Protect, I said. Good, he replied. Because that's how we win. We filed for temporary financial restraining orders. A preservation directive. Everything to freeze Trent's access to any funds he thought he could touch. We submitted the evidence binder. The hacking logs. The Shell transfers. The forged consulting invoices. The court granted the orders the next day. Any transfer from the Shell company now triggered contempt. Pierce called me after the hearing. We just got a valuation update, he said. You'll want to sit down. I was already sitting. How much? I asked. He paused. Then he said the number. $340 million. My stake in Ledger Lift. Based on signed secondaries and recent growth projections. Sworn and certified by an independent firm. My heart tripped. Then steadied. I'd known the company was valuable. But hearing the number out loud was different. It made it real. It made it a target. Pierce continued, let's schedule a 4-way meeting. Bring the calmest blazer you own. I hung up and stared at the wall. This was it. The moment Trent would realize he'd bet on the wrong hand. And I was about to show him every card I'd been holding. The 4-way meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning. I wore a navy blazer. Calm. Professional. Unshakable. Trent arrived 15 minutes late. Smug smile. Expensive shoes. Anya waited outside in the hallway, scrolling through her phone like she was bored. Trent's lawyer, a man named Vincent, opened with demands. Full disclosure of assets. Immediate spousal support. Division of business equity. He spoke like he was reading from a script. Like this was routine. Pierce slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were the trust documents. IP assignments. Board minutes. Investor letters. Dates. Signatures. Notarizations. Everything showing the company was separate property. Filed before the marriage. Protected by the Archer Living Trust. Vincent flipped through the pages. His smug expression faltered. Trent leaned forward. What is this? Separate property, Pierce said calmly. Established years before your marriage. Not subject to division. Vincent cleared his throat. We'll need to verify, Pierce interrupted. Already verified. Sworn valuations. Certified assignments. And here's the postnup your client signed. He slid another document across the table. Trent's signature. Notarized. The clause stated clearly, no claims to company IP, no interference with governance or reputation. Trent's face went pale. I don't remember signing that. You signed it the night Noelle's father had surgery, Pierce replied. You were emotional. But you were sober. And the notary confirms it. Vincent glanced at Trent. He didn't respond. Pierce added one more sheet to the pile. There's also an interference clause. With clawbacks. The room went still. Marin leaned forward and explained. The trust includes a clawback provision. If a spouse harms governance, reputation, or operations, they forfeit any reimbursements or settlements. They also trigger financial penalties. Vincent blinked hard. That's enforceable, Marin said. Already upheld in 2 prior cases involving similar trusts. Trent's face turned red. This is insane. I didn't know, you signed it, Pierce interrupted. Ignorance isn't a defense. Vincent flipped through the documents again. Slower this time. Looking for loopholes. There weren't any. I sat quietly, hands folded on the table. I didn't gloat. Didn't smile. Just watched as their leverage evaporated in real time. Pierce set his pen down. We'll also be seeking sanctions for the shell company. And for the attempted hacking. Vincent's eyes widened. Sanctions? Your client attempted to access Ms. Archer's financial accounts without authorization. Set up a shell LLC to hide marital funds. Leaked false information to the press. All documented. Trent stood up. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here and, sit down, Vincent said sharply. He sat. Pierce continued, we'll file the motion tomorrow. The judge will review the evidence. If you want to avoid further consequences, I suggest you consider settlement. The meeting ended. Trent stormed out. Anya followed. Vincent stayed behind, collecting his papers. He looked tired. As I left, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know what he forged. I stopped in the hallway. Read it again. Then I forwarded it to Pierce and Marin. Because whoever sent it just gave me another thread to pull. I went home and searched through our storage. Financial files. Tax returns. Business invoices. Then I found it. A consulting invoice with my digital signature. Dated 3 months ago. For $15,000. Paid to Caldwell Consulting LLC. I stared at it. I'd never signed this. Never approved it. Never even seen it. I zoomed in on the signature. The font kerning was off. The loop on the N was wrong. The timestamp didn't match my signing key. I called a forensic document expert I'd worked with on a compliance case. Sent her the file. She called back an hour later. This is a forgery. The signature was copied and pasted. Poorly. I thanked her and hung up. Then I added her report to the binder. This wasn't just marital misconduct anymore. This was fraud. Criminal exposure. I called Pierce. We need to escalate. He agreed. We filed a limited criminal referral. Not to destroy Trent. Just to protect myself. To draw a line. The detectives requested Trent's devices through his attorney. Phones. Laptops. Cloud accounts. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt necessary. Because Trent wasn't just trying to take my money. He was trying to forge my identity. And that crossed a line I couldn't ignore. My phone rang. Trent's sister, Dana. Crying. He told me you'd ruin him if I didn't help. I listened. She handed over voice memos. Recordings of Trent coaching her on what to say. How to plant the story about my hidden millions. How to make me look controlling and secretive. I saved the files and forwarded them to Pierce. Another piece of evidence. Another crack in their story. The court date was set. And I was ready. The courthouse hallway was cold and sterile. Trent stood near the vending machine, arms crossed. Anya was gone. Probably cut loose after the heat turned up. Trent walked over and leaned close. You always needed me, he hissed. I met his eyes. Calm. Steady. I needed peace. A bailiff standing nearby heard the exchange. He glanced over. Trent stepped back, realizing he'd just threatened me in front of a court officer. The bailiff made a note on his clipboard. I didn't say anything else. Just turned and walked toward the courtroom. Pierce was waiting inside. Ready? He asked. Yes. The judge called our case. We presented everything. The trust documents. The postnup. The valuation report. The hacking logs. The shell transfers. The forged invoice. The PR leak trail. All of it laid out in clean, chronological order. Trent's lawyer tried to argue. But every point he made was countered by evidence. By dates. By signatures. By timestamps. The judge reviewed the materials in silence. Then she extended the financial restraints. Admonished Trent's counsel for the aggressive tactics. And flagged the forgery for potential criminal review. We broke for settlement talks. Trent's swagger was gone. He sat hunched in his chair, whispering urgently with Vincent. He looked defeated. Pierce offered clean terms. I'd assume my separate debts. Trent returns the joint funds. No spousal support. No claims to the company. We walk away. Vincent whispered to Trent. Calculated. Retreated. Then Trent blurted out, what about her company? I'm owed a piece. The room went silent. Marin's voice was soft steel. You're not. She opened the postnup and read the clause aloud. The one Trent initialed the night my dad was in surgery. No claims to company IP. No interference with business operations. No equity division. It was clear. Binding. Signed. Trent's face drained of color. I didn't know what I was signing. You had independent counsel present, Marin replied. The notary confirmed you understood the terms. Vincent put his hand on Trent's arm. We need to talk. Outside. They left the room. Pierce leaned back in his chair. He's done. I sat quietly, hands folded. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. This wasn't about winning. It was about surviving. 5 minutes later, Trent's phone rang. He stepped into the hallway. I could hear his voice through the door. Rising. Panicked. Then quiet. When he came back, his eyes were wet. Red. Swollen. Vincent looked grim. My client has been informed of the valuation, he said carefully. And the clawback provisions. Pierce nodded. And? He's prepared to settle on your terms. I exhaled. Slowly. Steadily. It was over. We signed the paperwork. Trent returned the joint funds. Agreed to dissolve the Shell LLC. Waived all claims to the company. It was clean. Final. Binding. As we left the courthouse, Trent walked past me without looking up. Anya was nowhere to be seen. The gossip blog printed a correction. The criminal inquiry proceeded separately. And I walked into the warm afternoon sun, lighter than I'd been in months. The future was mine again. And this time I wasn't sharing the keys. 2 weeks later, the sanctions were entered. Trent was ordered to pay court costs for the fraudulent filings. The criminal inquiry into the forged invoice moved forward, though I didn't push for prosecution. I just wanted it documented. On record. The Shell LLC was dissolved. Hugh, Trent's college buddy, distanced himself fast. Said he didn't know what the account was being used for. The money was returned to the joint account, then split according to the settlement. Anya resigned from her firm quietly. No public statement. No drama. Just gone. The gossip blog's editor called to apologize. Said they'd been misled by a source. I didn't respond. I was done with that chapter. I focused on the company. On LedgerLift. We launched a new compliance feature that gained traction with mid-sized firms. Revenue jumped. The valuation held steady. My team didn't ask questions about the divorce. They didn't need to. They saw me show up every day. Focused. Steady. Leading. That was enough. My dad called one evening. You doing okay, kid? Yeah, Dad. I'm good. You sound good. I smiled. I am. Because I was. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Wasn't waiting for the next threat. The next ambush. I was just living. Building. Moving forward. The post-it was still in my evidence binder. Filed under kept. A reminder. A lesson. A scar that taught me to trust my gut. And to keep receipts. Always keep receipts. I unlocked the new office space for the Archer Foundation. It was smaller than I'd imagined. But it was mine. The foundation's mission was simple. Fund first-generation entrepreneurs. People like me. People who built from nothing. Who had more grit than capital. Who needed a break, not a handout. I hired a small team. A program director. A grant coordinator. An operations lead who reminded me of myself at 25. Hungry. Smart. Underestimated. We launched the first cohort with 10 founders. Each one received funding, mentorship, and access to a network that had taken me a decade to build. I sat in the back of the room during the kickoff event. Watching them pitch. Watching them dream. My dad sat in the front row. Hands finally resting. No more counting nickels. No more flickering neon. Just pride. Quiet and steady. After the event, he pulled me aside. Your mom would have been proud. I blinked back tears. Thanks, Dad. He squeezed my shoulder. You turned that ugliness into something good. That's rare. I thought about the post-it. The betrayal. The courtroom. The fear. And then I thought about this room. These founders. This future. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I had turned it into something good. Not revenge. Not payback. Just proof. Proof that I wasn't a loser. Proof that I'd built something lasting. Proof that dignity was sharper than cruelty. And receipts were the bridge between who I was and who I was becoming. Months passed. The foundation grew. We funded 30 founders in the first year. LedgerLift expanded into 3 new markets. The company's valuation climbed past $400 million. I didn't chase it. Didn't obsess over the numbers. I just built. Steadily. Cleanly. One day at a time. I ran into Vincent, Trent's lawyer, at a legal conference. He nodded politely. Ms. Archer. Mr. Vincent. He hesitated. Then said, "For what it's worth, I told him to settle earlier." He didn't listen. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Trent made his choices. I made mine. That was the whole story. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Trent moved to Portland. Started working at a startup. Anya moved to Denver. They didn't stay in touch. I didn't ask for details. Didn't care. They were footnotes now. Background noise. My life had moved on. Grown. Expanded. I dated someone briefly. A kind, steady person who didn't ask about my net worth or my company. It didn't last. But it reminded me that connection was still possible. That trust could be rebuilt. Slowly. Carefully. I wasn't in a rush. I had work to do. Founders to support. A company to grow. A foundation to expand. And a life to live that wasn't defined by what someone else thought I was worth. Because I'd learned the hardest lesson. The most important one. My value wasn't in a post-it. Or a courtroom. Or a bank account. It was in what I built. And who I helped build it. That was the legacy. That was the win. The second cohort of the Archer Foundation was bigger. 20 founders. More funding. More mentorship. More impact. We held a gala to celebrate. My team worked for months to plan it. The venue was a restored warehouse downtown. String lights. Long tables. A stage for pitches. My dad walked in wearing a suit I'd never seen before. He looked uncomfortable but proud. "You clean up nice, Dad." He laughed. "You too, kid." The founders pitched their ideas to a room full of investors, journalists, and supporters. I watched from the side. One founder, a woman named Kiara, pitched a platform for childcare workers to find flexible shifts. She spoke with fire. With clarity. With the kind of hunger I recognized. She reminded me of myself. After the event, Kiara found me. "Thank you," she said. "For believing in me when no one else did." I smiled. "Keep building. That's all the thanks I need." She nodded and walked away. I stood there for a moment, watching the room. The laughter. The handshakes. The deals being made. This was what mattered. Not the post-it. Not the betrayal. Not the courtroom. This. Building something bigger than myself. Bigger than my pain. Bigger than my past. My phone buzzed. A text from Marin. Saw the coverage. "You're doing good work." I replied, "We're just getting started." Because we were. The foundation. The company. The future. It was all just beginning. And I was finally ready to see where it would go. I moved into a new apartment. Sunlit. Spacious. Fewer shadows. The old place had too many memories. Too many echoes. This one felt clean. Like a reset. I unpacked slowly. Books. Photos. The evidence binder. I placed it on a shelf in my office. Not hidden. Just there. A reminder. A record. I invited my dad over for dinner. He walked through the space, nodding. "This is good, Noel. Real good." We ate pasta and talked about the foundation. About his diner days. About Mom. He didn't mention Trent. Didn't ask. He knew better. After dinner, he stood to leave. "You did it, kid. You built the life you wanted." I hugged him. "Thanks, Dad. For teaching me how." He patted my back. "You taught yourself." I just kept the lights on. After he left, I stood on the balcony. The city stretched out below. Lights. Movement. Life. I thought about the post-it. The betrayal. The fight. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Wasn't hurt. I was just done. Done carrying it. Done letting it define me. Done letting someone else's cruelty shape my story. I went inside and pulled the post-it from the binder. Stared at it. You'll always be a loser. I smiled. Then I folded it carefully and placed it back in the binder. Not as a wound. As proof. Proof that words don't define you. Actions do. And I'd spent every day since that morning proving him wrong. Not to him. To myself. The company hit a milestone. 500 enterprise clients. LedgerLift was everywhere. Compliance teams across industries used our platform. Regulators cited us in reports. Competitors tried to copy us. We stayed ahead. My COO pitched an acquisition offer. A major tech firm wanted to buy us. The number was staggering. I said no. Why? She asked. Because we're not done building, I replied. She smiled. Good answer. The foundation expanded too. We launched a fellowship program. A mentorship network. A seed fund for underrepresented founders. The impact was measurable. Real. Lasting. I gave a keynote at a tech conference. Talked about resilience. About preparation. About protecting what you build. After the talk, a young founder approached me. How did you stay calm when everything was falling apart? I thought about the question. I didn't stay calm, I admitted. I just kept moving. One step. One decision. One day. She nodded. That's what I needed to hear. I watched her walk away. Realized that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a map. A guide. A proof point. And that felt more valuable than any valuation. More powerful than any revenge. Because dignity, I'd learned, wasn't just about surviving betrayal. It was about building something so strong that betrayal couldn't break it. And receipts weren't just evidence. They were love letters to your future self. Reminders that you saw it coming. Prepared for it. And walked through it with your head up. One evening, I got an email. From Trent. Subject line, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it. The message was short. He admitted he'd made mistakes. Said he'd been lost. Scared. That he'd listened to the wrong people. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't ask for anything. Just said he was sorry. I read it twice. Then I closed it. I didn't reply. Not because I was cruel. But because there was nothing left to say. The apology didn't change what happened. Didn't erase the post-it. Didn't undo the betrayal. It was just words. And I'd learned that words were cheap. Actions mattered. Choices mattered. And Trent's choices had consequences he was still living with. I deleted the email. Not out of anger. Out of closure. Because I didn't need his apology to move forward. I'd already moved forward. Miles ahead. Into a life he couldn't touch. Couldn't claim. Couldn't diminish. I thought about responding. About saying something gracious or final. But then I realized. Silence was enough. Silence was powerful. Silence was my answer. So I closed my laptop. Poured a glass of wine. And sat on my balcony watching the city lights. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And I was exactly where I needed to be. Free. Focused. And finally, fully mine. The foundation celebrated its second anniversary. We'd funded over 60 founders. Created jobs. Generated revenue. Changed lives. I stood on the stage, looking out at the crowd. Founders. Investors. Mentors. My dad in the front row. I spoke about the journey. About starting from nothing. About building through doubt. About protecting what you create. Someone once left me a note, I said. It called me a loser. And for a moment, I believed it. The room was silent. But then I realized something. That note wasn't about me. It was about them. About their fear. Their insecurity. Their need to tear me down to feel powerful. I paused. So I kept the note. Not as a scar. As a reminder. That other people's words don't define you. Your work does. Your choices do. Your resilience does. The room erupted in applause. After the event, Kiera approached me. She'd just closed her Series A. $3 million. You were right, she said. Building is the answer. I smiled. Keep going. You're just getting started. My dad hugged me before he left. Your mom would have loved this. I held him tight. I know, Dad. That night, I went home and opened the evidence binder one last time. The post-it was still there. Faded but readable. I ran my finger over the words. Then I closed the binder and placed it on the shelf. Archive. Not armor. Because I didn't need protection anymore. I'd already won. Not in a courtroom. Not with a settlement. But in every choice I made after that morning. Every founder I funded. Every line of code I wrote. Every boundary I held. That was the victory. That was the revenge. Living well. Building strong. Moving forward. And never, ever letting someone else's cruelty define my worth. The criminal inquiry into the forged invoice closed without charges. The prosecutor said there wasn't enough evidence to prove intent beyond reasonable doubt. I didn't push it. The documentation was enough. The record was clear. Trent's reputation took the hit. Word spread in our industry. Not through gossip. Through silence. Through deals that didn't happen. Through networks that closed. Consequences came quietly. Professionally. Permanently. The Shell LLC was fully dissolved. Hugh paid a fine for improper business practices. Dana apologized privately. Said she'd been manipulated. I accepted it without warmth. Some bridges don't rebuild. Anya disappeared from social media entirely. I heard she moved overseas. Started fresh somewhere no one knew the story. Maybe that was her consequence. Running. Always running. LedgerLift acquired a smaller competitor. We integrated their tech and doubled our market share. The valuation climbed again. $450 million. Then 500. The number stopped mattering. What mattered was the mission. The impact. The legacy. I promoted 3 team members to senior leadership. Built the bench. Prepared for scale. The company wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours. A collective. A movement. I dated someone new. Someone who asked about my day, not my equity. Someone who cooked dinner and didn't care about my net worth. It felt different. Lighter. Real. We took it slow. No rush. No pressure. Just 2 people building something together. One meal at a time. One conversation at a time. One honest moment at a time. Opening night at the Archer Foundation's new headquarters. A full building. 3 floors. Conference rooms. Co-working space. A resource library. Everything a founder needed to build. My dad stood in the lobby, hands in his pockets, looking up at the atrium. This is something, kid. I stood beside him. We did it, Dad. He shook his head. You did it. I just taught you to keep receipts. I laughed. That was the most important lesson. The building filled with people. Founders. Investors. Press. Community leaders. I gave a short speech. Thanked everyone. Cut the ribbon. Then I stepped back and watched. Watched the founders network. Watched the mentors connect. Watched the future take shape in real time. That night, I went home to my sunlit apartment. I pulled the evidence binder from the shelf one last time. I opened it to the post-it. Stared at the words. You'll always be a loser. Then I wrote beneath it in pen, but I kept building anyway. I closed the binder and placed it back on the shelf. Archive complete. Story told. Lesson learned. I walked out onto the balcony. The city glowed below. Warm. Alive. Full of possibility. I thought about Trent. About the betrayal. About the fight. And I realized I didn't feel anything anymore. Not anger. Not hurt. Not even satisfaction. Just peace. Because dignity, I'd learned, wasn't about revenge. It was about showing up. Every day. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. And receipts weren't just evidence. They were bridges. Between who you were and who you were becoming. Between the person someone said you were and the person you proved yourself to be. I smiled at the city. At the future. At the life I'd built from nothing. The post-it was wrong. I wasn't a loser. I was a builder. And I was just getting started. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What does family mean to you? Please share below and subscribe to this channel for more stories like mine.